cut him. Unfortunately, I was going to do a concert in South Africa, and the people suggested that I cut my dreads because they may think I'm a runaway revolutionary. I'll just say it like that.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was
okay,
like one of the things that
Paul, I'm going to
Yeah, let's
interrupt
go.
you for a moment.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Now, no problem. Well, we want to hear from you. That's what you're here for. So I've just muted everybody because we're going to get started. Thank you to those who have joined us on time. So, good evening and welcome everybody to Sharing the Turf. This is our event tonight. We're making this event because we're very cognizant and we're very aware of things that are going on in our country today, an uproar of racial tensions that began about a month ago or so with the killing of George Floyd, a black person, by a police officer. And there's a lot of things that have happened since then, and a lot of things that we're thinking about, a lot of questions we have, a lot of things we want to learn. So we have invited the team from Project Cure, who are here tonight to share with us some of their experiences going back 30 years ago and the efforts they've made to bring greater unity and harmony among various communities, various very, very different communities, different color communities, to bring them together to find commonality, that we are all one people created by one God, one nation under God. And so we're very grateful that you joined us tonight, and we have a lot to learn. We want to hear from you. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time. And I know we're going to get some hip-hop rap going on as well, with your permission, so everybody hang in there tight. What I'm going to do is first just let all our guests know who is joining us this evening, who our guests are, a bit of their bio and their background. And I'm going in the order of the paper. So this doesn't mean you're greater or less greater. Every one of you are great. We're going to start off with Dr. Richard Green, who is joining us. And Doctor, we're very happy that you're here tonight. Dr. Green is the director of Crown Heights Youth Collective. That's in Brooklyn, New York, for those that don't know, where my wife is from, where I lived for many years. He's a community activist. He was selected by the New York City Mayor's office to function as the liaison from the African American community to meet with the Lubavitch Hasidic community after the '91 riots. He's received many civic and national awards. He lives with his wife and children in Crown Heights. So Dr. Green, thank you for being here. Reverend Paul Chandler, thank you for being here. He is the Assistant Director of the Jackie Robinson Center for Physical Culture. He's a community activist. He's a co-director of Project Cure, co-singer in the Harmony Music Group with Dr. Laz and the Cure. He's an ordained minister. He's a recipient of, again, many civic and national awards. He lives with his wife in Far Rockaway and had some major achievements in these efforts. So we're happy that you're here as well, from one ordained person to another ordained person. Thank you and God bless you. Dr. David Lazarson, Dr. Laz, or as he likes to be known as, Lazman Hazeh. He's a present man. He's in the present moment. He's thanking God for being here wherever he is. He's the director of Project Cure. He's the author of 6 books, including the book titled Sharing Turf, which is the title of this evening. And that was a race relations book after the Crown Heights riots. And that book was actually used to write the screenplay for the movie called Crown Heights, based on this book. Stars Howie Mandel. As Dr. Laz, I'm sure we're going to hear about that movie this evening as well. Dr. Laz is a musician. He's also a wonderful teacher, school teacher. He received Teacher of the Year awards twice from 2 different public school systems, in Buffalo, New York in 1981, and in Broward County, which is the nation's 6th largest school district, in 2007. And in 2008, he was one of the 5 educators to be inducted into the Teachers National Hall of Fame. So, Kol HaKavod, God bless you, and keep up the good work. He lives with his wife and 7 children now here in Miami, right in our neighborhood. We have also the youth directors who were very involved and in leadership of Project Cure. TJ Moses is here with us. Thank you, TJ. He's one of the original youth leaders. He was working with the Summer Youth Employment Program And then he met another leader who's Yudi Simon, hopefully we're going to meet as well. And they realized that they have a lot more in common than they thought they did. They love their mutual love for hip hop freestyle dancing. And they together assume these positions as role models for their peers and communities. TJ is also a community activist and organizer, also received several awards for community service. And now he lives in New Hampshire with his partner and several children. And finally, we may be joined by Yudi Simons. Yudi is another one of the original youth leaders for Project Cure. He became one of the rappers and hip hop style freestyle dancers for the Cure's unique music group. And he worked together with TJ, and they created this Hasidic and African-American dance duet. Wow, I'd love to see what that looks like. He's also received numerous civic and community awards. He's a wonderful ambassador for peace, a role model. He lives in Far Rockaway with his wife and 2 children. So that's a very brief description of the great people who are going to be presenting at our evening tonight. I'd like to get straight into our questions and our conversation. But before I do that, I want to show you a small video clip which may set the stage and take us back to a time where all of this began. So let me try to share this clip. Hang in there 1 second. Nope, not that one. 1 minute. All right, this one. If you don't hear the sound, please let me know. You should hear it.
Crown Heights, Brooklyn, August 1991. I remember the scene as African Americans and members of the Hasidic Lubavitcher community clashed. Rocks and bottles flying through the air. It seemed to many New Yorkers that this neighborhood was out of control. A 7-year-old boy from the Caribbean enclave was killed when struck by a car driven by a Lubavitcher driver. In apparent retaliation, a rabbinical student from Australia was fatally stabbed by a black youth. For 3 nights, the streets seethed.
I didn't even get out through the gate. Well, 10 guys on top of me beat me up.
That little boy and the little girl, somebody got to pay for that.
Okay, so that's a difficult video to watch, and it looks so similar to stuff we've been seeing in the news in the past few weeks. I wasn't in New York at the time. I was a young boy, but I do remember those 1991 Brooklyn riots. And as you heard, Yankel Rosenbaum from Australia was killed, and I knew him. I remember as a child, he was much older than I was in Australia, but he would play cricket with us in the backyard of the yeshiva synagogue and school. So I knew him, I remembered him, and then I have an older cousin who was a very good friend of his. So that was a tragedy. There were many tragedies then. So what I think I want to do right away to Dr. Laz, Reverend Paul, Dr. Green, take us back to Brooklyn, New York, 1991 or 1990, or the decade before then. At that time, probably you were either a Hasidic Chabad person or an African American if you were living in Crown Heights. There weren't many others. And what was going on in the years then between the communities, positive or negative, because something was brewing and something was building up that this thing exploded. It's like I've been thinking, this George Floyd event happened and it's a tragedy. Sadly, there've been more such tragedies in the past, but things didn't blow up the way they blew up now. And the question is why and what happened. So if you could, I'm going to unmute you guys. Let me just start with Dr. Laz and then we'll move on from there. Tell us a bit about, set the stage for us so we can understand what was happening between these communities. Sorry, I just muted you again, Dr. Laz.
Okay, so I lived in Crown Heights at that point probably for like 7 years, 8 years up until the riots actually started. So what I would like to do, I'd like to turn it over to Richard and Paul because they can paint a picture that goes back a little bit further. They've lived in Crown Heights for longer than I lived there for about 13 years. But I'd like them to paint the picture. Then I'll jump in at some point, you know, to just to give it to you from my perspective as well. So if Richard or Paul, one of you guys want to start with that? And
Okay, Reverend Paul, just unmute yourself, please. And also Dr. Green, please unmute yourself.
Paul, go right ahead.
No, you go ahead, Richard, because you got to leave, and I'm going to leave at 5 or something, okay? So you go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I came to Crown Heights when I was 10 years old. I lived on Kingston Avenue, 289 Kingston, which is diagonally across from 770. So as a boy coming up, I was always kind of fascinated looking out my window on a Sabbath. And those days, Eastern Parkway would have been filled on both sides, the benches, everyone would be strolling and sitting. And I'll tell you how far back that goes, Paul. Kingston Avenue was a two-way street at that time.
That's right. Actually, but right before that, remember we had the
trolley.
We had the trolley that used to go down.
oh,
Trolleys were still going down Kingston Avenue. Those were that's your.
I didn't realize that.
And so I had been in Crown Heights now for many years. As you talked about before 1981, before 1991, I worked with a group called Free Friends and Refugees of Eastern Europe, which were people that just were migrating from Russia and other places into Crown Heights. And we ran a feeding program for the youth. I run a youth program for the last 41 years now. I've been running that program. So we would always be getting the food, sharing information, sharing pieces with that group called Free. So 91 came, and after the accident, I was called out by the mayor's office at that time, Mayor Dinkins, and they asked me to go to go back out. I just came in, and they said, "Have you listened to the news?" I said, "No." I turned on the 10 o'clock news, and sure enough, I saw it. They asked me to go back out there. So I ended up out on the Eastern Parkway in Kingston. Began to talk with the young people out there on the strip. There were lots of young black youths on one end, which was the Albany Avenue side, and then further down in Kingston Avenue was a large number of Hasidic youths. And I began to communicate, hearing some of their concerns, hear how they felt. But before we knew it, it was into a series. But we had came from the precinct, and at the precinct, the police department and the mayor and everyone had talked. But we didn't know about Yankel at that time. When we left just before we left the precinct, we found out that Yankel Rosenbaum had passed. At that time, we were still unaware of that. So it became kind of, you might say, hectic when we got out to Kingston and Eastern Parkway. And for the next few years up to now, but weeks, hours, days, I was out there trying my best to keep the conversations, get the dialogue going between the blacks and the youth, and the black youth and the Hasidic youth. And it started to work because we got a little school, which was school I attended in the 5th grade. PS 167 was our school building that the mayor's office had made sort of the headquarters. And at that time, I was told that we're going to bring in somebody from the Hasidic community to meet with us, and that was Dr. Laz. And while Paul and I go back, we were in other capacities working prior to that, but not in this particular capacity. As a youth worker, I worked with him, and he worked with me over on the other side. So when we came out that first meeting with the youth in the school cafeteria, sitting on two sides of the table, that's how the debate and dialogue started. And I think the others here would probably be pretty remembering and qualified to talk about those conversations we were having with the black youth and the Hasidic youth. You know, the typical things: why this, why that, the questions. Well, why did they wear this? Why did these guys wear this? And it began to just be fascinating to me. I know it was, because I didn't realize that these youths were so unaware of their neighbors. Why the Hasidic youths dressed a certain way, why they went to school on Sundays, things like that. I thought everybody knew, but we found out when we started the dialogue, when Laz brought his young people over and I brought my young people over. And Paul, we always now began to hear these things that we didn't know before. So that's how I got involved with it. And Paul.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Green. So let's go to Paul, Reverend Paul now. I also want to try to understand what kind of relationship, if any, did you, Reverend Paul, have with Jewish people or the Jewish community prior to 1991? I sense whenever there's two different kinds of cultures coming together, there's a sense of fear or mistrust, or there's some kind of, they just don't understand or know about each other. So what was your experience with that, even prior to 1991?
Well, I was born in Crown Heights. So when I was born, it was pretty much Jewish, Italians, and a few German families, and a few Black families. I remember the Lee families, they lived across the street from me. I don't want to go through that, but it was a mix. And a lot of people, if you didn't have a home, they, like Richard said, they lived in the apartment buildings. When I was young, we used to call them the Jewish apartment buildings, because majority of the people that lived in those apartment buildings were Jewish people. A few Black people rented apartments in there, but majority were really Jewish families. And we just took it for granted they were, but they were also non-Jewish white people who lived in those buildings. So it was pretty mixed. Actually, back then, the supers, when I was young, the supers were a mix between, in some of the buildings they had white supers, and some of the buildings they had Black supers, so or super helpers, so because they weren't Orthodox Jews, we did a lot of things together. A lot of things. We played together, we ate together, we went to school together. We would leave school on the days that we had religious instruction. It was after lunch. It was on a Wednesday, that we would go to our different places of worship. Some people did, some people didn't, but that was a regular thing. And that's when you could almost see the divide, really, then. And it's almost like the division that we see now, to an extent, in terms of religions, because on Saturday, the Hasidims are very out there, as big, and on Sunday, the Christians are. Or like if you look across the nation, on Sunday, even Christians are separated by color, and that would give you a good picture of how divided we are, and actually we have the same belief. In I'm thinking, say in the 50s, my school teacher, 3 of my school teachers one of them lived on my block and 2 lived right behind me. And I went to school with their siblings. So it was quite different. It was quite different. So I think when the community became really a large number of Hasidics people, it kind of drifted away, because Utica Avenue I would say really from Nostrand Avenue, mainly from Nostrand Avenue, all the way down to Brownsville, to the Pickens Theater or further, there were nothing but delicatessens, kosher restaurants, etc. And there weren't like the restaurants that are on Kingston Avenue now, but that's where we got our knishes. That was where we, and as a child, we played basketball, we played football, we played what we called Chinese handball against the walls. We played, all kinds of games, Coco Ring Olivio, all of the games that children play. And it was Jewish kids and Black kids. And that's how we actually lived. I don't recall any race fights when I was young. I can't recall none. And I just had my 76th birthday Thursday, see. So, and I lived in Crown Heights the majority of my life. So what was happening now, there was a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge in terms of the two communities that had become two separate communities because of the influx of the whole Hasidim being Orthodox. Trust me.
Okay, Reverend,
play,
I'm going to interrupt you for a moment.
You should never give a Reverend a mic. That's why I wanted to go last.
No, I know, I'm a rabbi, trust me. But I do want to get into the clash in a moment, but we're just setting up the stage over here. One little question, if you can address, in your capacity as an ordained minister, did you ever have any official engagement with your community and the Jewish community? Were there, besides, kids on the street, were there any formal engagements between the two communities?
Yeah. Not any that was really like what we started doing. No. It was mainly by chance and the fact that we lived next to each other or near each other. There were activities, but nothing as cohesive or like when this bad thing happened, a good thing came out of it because it gave us a real opportunity to know each other. Sadly, we lost two people, but it's like we turned a bad thing into a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you, Reverend. Thank you for explaining all that and sharing that part of your life with us. And Mazel Tov for your birthday, by the way. God should bless you with a happy, successful year and long life. So let's go to Dr. Laz. Dr. Laz is on the other side. He's a member of the Hasidic community and spent time living in Crown Heights, as you mentioned. Doctor, when and how did you encounter the Black community? And prior to 1991, prior to the explosive outbreak, what got you into that?
Okay. First, I want to thank you for hosting this event. And it's to your credit and to your synagogue's credit and really to all the participants who are here. So thank you everyone for participating in what we like to call the grand conversation. Also, Rabbi, if you could enable the chat function, and this way if people have any questions that they would like to bring up, they could send them over to you via chat. That would be great.
Yes, thank you. Let me just announce that chat is open. If anyone has any questions, please post them because we're going to address the questions for sure at the end, but maybe during the program as well.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So I want to welcome all the awesome people from Project Cure who continue to inspire me. Richard, Paul, TJ, and Yudi. And Yudi is here. He's busy with his kid. Welcome, Yudi. And welcome, Brother T. And, I have a little bit of chutzpah, so if people could just put on their video so we can see who we're talking to, just so you'll be muted if you don't mind, but this way we can, it's always nice to see your lovely faces. Okay? Beautiful. So don't be shy. And if you can hear me, just wave hello, give me thumbs up. Okay, great. I see also, is that, the Zip Man is here. Oh my God. Okay, Zip Man, we go way back. So welcome, Brother Z, and also to the Benamus. Haven't seen you guys in a while with the whole social distancing thing. So nice to see your faces as well. Appreciate you guys coming out. And Larry Kohler Esses, who just got in touch with us a couple days ago. Welcome aboard. Great to have everybody. Thank you so much. So, hey, Zip Man. There's that face. How you doing? So Zipman did some of our early videos way back in the day. When we first started, we were first getting going. He's an excellent videographer and great to see you. My brother Z. And maybe this will inspire you to get back involved. We need you, and the country needs you, and the world needs you. Okay, so I wanted to respond to your question. I grew up in Buffalo, New York. Was not raised Hasidic at all. Was, I guess you might say, raised more like, I hate to use the labels, but somewhere between Reform and conservative. Didn't start keeping kosher or Shabbat or anything until I was 23, until I went to this yeshiva in Morristown, New Jersey. And so I went to public school my whole life. And when I got my master's degree in special ed, I got a special blessing from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to begin my teaching career at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community School in Buffalo, New York. And, you know, even though I'd gone to public school my whole life, it's just so funny how, you know, stereotypes just get in your head. And sometimes, you know, these, you know, now the issue of racism and everything, you know, we got to kick out that little bit of racism that I think we all tend to have because we're subjective human beings. And, you know, these are like issues that here I went to public school my whole life. And now I'm back in teaching the public school system. But now I'm looking like this with my beard and kippah and everything. So I thank God it was very successful. I learned a lot from my students. In fact, I learned more from my students than my teachers. And it was a wonderful experience. I wrote a book about it called Skull Caps and Switchblades. And when we moved to Crown Heights, after about 6 years there, 6, 7 years, maybe it's a little less actually. Yeah, it may have been actually, I think our 3rd or 4th year. One of the rabbis at a payphone. Now, I don't know if you're old enough to remember what a payphone is, folks, but he was standing, it was Rabbi Hecht, was from the, one of the Crown Heights rabbis, famous personality in Crown Heights. He was at a payphone. And so this was the first day of the riots. I had driven back to camp on that day and saw him. And I said to him, I said, Rabbi, you know, I went to public school my whole life. I worked, you know, I've been involved with the Black community. That's where I was teaching for the last 6 years in Buffalo. If there's anything I can do, let me know. So unbeknownst to me, I didn't find out until a few days later. I was sort of recommended Uncle Sam style through him. Then we got the go-ahead from the Lubavitcher Rebbe and to meet first with Richard at the Brooklyn Science Museum. And, you know, I was wondering how it was going to be. They said to me, you can't meet at like a public school, you can't meet at a yeshiva, you have to meet at a neutral place. So they picked the Brooklyn Science Museum. And always the image in my head was of the Sharks and the Jets, you know, from West Side Story, right? You got to meet at the gym because it's neutral territory. So, you know, there I see Richard, this tall African-American guy, long dreadlocks, wearing the ox symbol. I come in, we both look very ethnic, okay? You know, me looking like this with my beard, my tzitzis hanging out. And Richard and I'd say we spent an hour talking about the 60s, all the great music groups that we had seen in the 60s. Our only disagreement was he's a big Jets fan, I'm a big Buffalo Bills fan. And that was it. I really felt like I was meeting my long lost soul brother. Our hearts and neshamas, I think, and souls were in the same place. We decided, like Richard said, we're going to bring our youth together. Just to paint the picture a little bit more for everyone, what Crown Heights was like then. You saw a little bit from the footage that you showed, Rabbi. It looked like a war zone, and very similar to some of the footage we're seeing on TV, on our social media today. There were cops all over, and helicopters and snipers on rooftops. Cops in vans with taped up windows, zooming along, you know, going the wrong way down one-way streets. We were told if you're going to this meeting that was arranged between Richard and this is where I would meet Paul at our very first meeting, Reverend Chandler, that we weren't allowed to walk with more than 3 people in a group. Otherwise, we would be arrested for inciting a riot. So it was with that in the background that we met just maybe a week, 10 days after the riots had started. And they went on for a good 4 or 5 days before it really started to calm down. And we had all of the when I say young, they went from teenagers all the way up into their 30s, probably some young 40s, and all of the African American participants on one side of a big circle and the Hasidic participants on another. We were really like, sitting on opposite sides. And as Richard explained, we opened it up and people started asking questions, what's with the beanie on your head? What's with the white strings? What's with the dreadlocks? What's with the Ankh symbol you're wearing? And, as Richard pointed out, it occurred to me how some of these people had been in this community living side by side for 20, 30, maybe 40 years, and we knew nothing about each other. We knew very little about each other, not even like why we're dressed the way we are. So, and then after that, all the stereotypes came out, we said, okay, that's great, guys. If you have any issues on your mind, now's the time. And just to further paint the picture, the mayor's office, one of the commissioners, he physically blocked the door with his body not to let the media in. And we all decided, we discussed beforehand, that we didn't want the media coming in and taking pictures. We didn't want it to be like a photo op session. We wanted it to be real, for everybody who was participating, because it took a lot of guts to come. There was a lot of anti-sentiment, not to reach out to quote unquote the other side. And so then all the stereotypes came out. You guys control the media. You guys are all wealthy. How come, you Jews control the police department? How come you guys, are all drug dealers? You're all hang out on the street corner. You don't do anything productive with your lives. And all these negative stereotypes. And I'll end with this one part. So at that meeting, they got to meet these young Hasidic young men who lived in rent-subsidized housing, who needed food stamps, who maybe came from a single-parent family, who were far from wealthy, and these Jewish kids got to meet African Americans who had to leave the meeting early. One guy had to go he had a violin recital coming up, and another one or two had to go study for tests. And when they said that, I remember they asked Richard or Paul for permission to leave. And they told them why, because they had to go to, practice the violin and study for their exam. And some of the young Hasidic participants like snickered at them, like, yeah, right. Like, right, that's what you're going for. And so all that stuff came out. And then, I remember they said, oh, let me school you. Yeah, just because I'm black, you think doesn't mean I don't want an education. Just because I'm black, you think I don't like classical music. And then I remember him saying, I know more about classical music than all you guys put together. And it was probably true. So I'll just say at the end of that meeting, we started to break up. And then Paul says to me, he says, Laz, we gotta circle up and say a prayer together. So I remember I said to him, with all due respect, Reverend, let's wait and see if there will be a second meeting. Let's do it at the next meeting. And he said to me, these are the kind of leaders these guys are here. He said to me, no, Laz, I'm telling you, we got to do it now, right here, right now. Right? Just as we are all right here, right now. So I said, okay, Reverend, let's go for it. And then he said to me, do you know the 23rd Psalm in Hebrew? And he picked, thank God, the only one I know by heart, which is the 23rd Psalm. And we all circled up. And this time, it wasn't all, these white Hasidic participants on one side and all the African American participants on the other. This time we had to it was mixed holding hands. And for some of the guys, it was not easy. It took a few seconds before they went like that. And then Paul said the 23rd Psalm in English. I said it in Hebrew. And I'll let the other guys talk about, what all this led to, the dialogues and how this thing just took off. It just took off.
Okay, so Dr. Laz, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Very, very interesting. So I have a couple questions that I want to segue into the next part. And by the way, if anyone wants to post questions on the chat, feel free to, and I'll be happy to present those questions. So this meeting sounds really brave and amazing. This is just 10 days or so after these riots, and there's a lot of hostility and nervousness going on. First of all, were there any communal officials from either side represented here at these meetings, or were they endorsing it? I mean, or was this a complete grassroots efforts? And then why was the leadership not involved if they weren't involved? That's my first question, because it really has to start from the top. And I think once it starts from there, then everyone else can follow suit. And then the next question I want to hear follow on. So you had these meetings, you brought, it sounds like it's youth together. And I'm curious, why just youth? Why not adults together as well? And what followed on from these meetings? What did you guys come together? What was your goal and what did you create?
Well, am I muted?
Yes, Rev, you're on.
I think as Richard was and as Laz was by the Rebbe, and Richard and myself, we were asked by the mayor and by Richard, I can't think of his last name.
Murphy.
Richard Murphy.
Yeah,
he was the commissioner, right? He was commissioner of youth programs, etc., in the city. They're the ones that actually asked us to try to do something together to bring the youth together. And we were out there already, not in agitating. We were trying to keep a peace. But in 1968, Dr. King was assassinated. And I can't recall, and Richard, you could help me. And I thought about that as Laz was talking. I can't recall any buildings on Kingston Avenue or Eastern Parkway getting set on fire, et cetera, et cetera. How about you, Richard?
No, I don't either. I was on my way to Vietnam when
well, I was there,
Dr. King,
and it came to my mind just now, and I never really thought about it. Now, places like Pickens Avenue got hit, right, you know, because of the stores. But Utica Avenue, really, even where they had all the stores on Utica Avenue, they didn't get hit. Remember, we used to have the Horn and Hardocks. We had all of the great stores over there, Woolworths, etc. They weren't attacked. So, and even when we talk about this attack thing, well, go ahead. I just wanted to make that point. That was it. I'm not.
Well, that's a really interesting point. So, what leads up to such an explosion of attack and anger? It happened then in 1991. It happened now a month ago. There's been many racial issues, unfortunately, over the years. But why is it only occasionally such a violent attacks occur?
Well, I think the death of those two young men really, I think, propelled it was in the air, the atmosphere. And I think, and I know when the young, the driver, etc., and I'd like to hear Laz tell this part.
With the driver?
Yeah, with the driver and the ambulance and the cops, so you can really get a good picture. You actually painted a little better than me.
No, well, you know, just to jump a second, Laz.
Go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, go ahead, my brother.
The two cops that was on the scene that was leading the Rebbe's motorcade.
Right.
I knew both of those cops. So what I began to ask, and I started to speak to them, ironically, both of them were Black.
Right.
And I asked them right away, what happened? How come once the ambulance was called, the ambulance that came to the scene was not the Hatzalah that was there already with the Rebbe's parade. The Hatzalah goes with the Rebbe, went with the Rebbe wherever he went. But that ambulance was what was called a BLS ambulance, basic life support. The drama of the accident of the young Gavin Cato was needed what they call an ALS ambulance, advanced life support. Kings County Hospital was 9 minutes away from the scene. So in 9 minutes, an ambulance was there. And if you remember, Paul Laz, one of the incidents that started was everyone in the street started saying the Hasidic ambulance took the driver and the other guy, which the cops told me he made that happen, right, because he feared for the safety of the two young men driving the car.
Right.
So he said, I made them take that, the two young men away. And why? Because the ambulance that was there could not treat Gavin Cato's injuries. So that was one of the most primary clash incidents when those two young men were taken away in the Hot Phillips ambulance, and not the young youth that was on the ground injured.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
not everyone's so familiar with this whole background story, why the riot started. I don't know if Dr. Laz maybe wants to paint the scene, or if you want me to describe that incident with the young black boy. You want to share what happened at the beginning?
Well, I think, Richard nailed that. They were coming back from the cemetery. The Rebbe would go there very often to pray for different people by the previous Lubavitch Rebbe's gravesite. And so they were coming back, and then he, I always look at it like, I think one time we were speaking at one of our dialogues, and somehow this notion of if there was a recipe book for how to have an urban riot, you had all the factors were there. You had two, very distinct ethnic communities, very little communication, a lot of misunderstanding, a lot of, stereotypes about the quote unquote other side. You had a long, hot summer, you had high unemployment, you had there was a concert in the park. It was a free community concert that just got out a few minutes before this incident happened. And so thus on the streets were lots of young people who, many of them did not live in Crown Heights. So there was sort of no vested interest. And then this accident happens. And like Richard said, they see two African-American kids, young kids badly hurt on the sidewalk. And they see the first ambulance coming, which is the quote unquote Jewish ambulance, the Hatzalah ambulance, taking away the Jewish drivers from that car. And, the next block, another ambulance was coming, but, couldn't really deal with the injuries that Gavin Cato had. But I always tell people, if the situation were reversed, and we saw that happening with, with Jewish kids on the sidewalk, and we saw an ambulance come and take away two black drivers, we would have gone ballistic. It would. So it was just another piece of that cookbook, that recipe book. That's all it took, was one spark. And that was the spark. That was that spark turned into a roaring bonfire. And so I'm saying, in the midst of all that was, a media that often liked to portray us as enemies. I knew that wasn't so because of in my earlier college days. Blacks and Jews, we fought for many issues together. For, whether it was civil rights and marches on Washington or whatever. So I had seen that unity take place. And I always feel like if any two ethnic groups should work together, it's blacks and Jews, because we are both victim of, racism. There's racism, there's anti-Semitism, there's, I would never claim to know what it's like to go through living in America as an African-American. I would never claim that. I can only say from experience as a more obvious Jewish person, and what that has meant, and the different experiences I've gone through. So
Okay, so thank you. What I want to do is ask you now a question to sort of get into the heart of tonight, and that is, and let's maybe bring in TJ and Yudi also here. So
sorry, Rabbi, can I just jump into the, hi, my name is Yudi. I just want to jump in and answer quickly to your previous question.
Yudiman!
Let him go, Laz. Let him go. The time.
No, I have to, this is tradition. Yudiman!
But the time.
Okay, we're going to jump quickly. Okay. All right, so to real quickly. So to answer your question, what is the similarities between what happened in 91 and what's happening now? But you see, if you look, the polarization of the perspectives, a lot of divide and conquer mentality being used against us, and so we lose our ability to be subjective when we're in a perspective of a specific color or a specific thought process, and then everything's either against or with. And that's really what I see happening now, and it's playing out on many fronts and many patterns. And then as well, it was you know Mr. Green mentioned not tonight but previously mentioned a number of times how when we sat down and talked, we saw that we all felt we weren't getting enough of the pie. The other side was getting more, but when we really sat down and looked at it, we saw we're all really getting about the same amount. And they played us against each other in Crown Heights. And that's exactly what's going on right now. We're being divided and separated in every piece and fashion they can. No, sorry, that was my answer. I just wanted to share that to.
No, okay, thank you for that, Yuri, and we're glad to meet you on screen. I know you had a partner, TJ. Let's bring on
He's right
TJ
here.
for a moment. Yeah, I see TJ. Tell us about your getting into this dialogue and project here together with Yuri and other Jewish people.
Okay, so I became a member of Project Cure about a year after the riots. Myself, I was working with I was working with Mr. G, Mr. Green, and I was working for the Summer Youth Employment Program, which basically takes inner city youth and gives them a job for the summer. And I was lucky enough to have my main site to be at the Crown Heights Youth Collective. So one of the assignments that we had was the mural for Gavin Cato and Yanko Rosenbaum. And it was interesting because on the way to pick up some of the supplies for the mural, he put on a tape, a cassette, and he asked, it wasn't just myself, it was about maybe 9 other brothers in the van with us. And he asked us, do you know who this is? And everybody really didn't know. We were throwing out different answers and stuff. And he stopped and he said, no, that's Brother Malcolm. I'm saying that to say that at the time I was 15 years old, and that's the first time I ever heard Brother Malcolm's voice. So you'll understand later on what I mean by that. But so what happened was I met Yudi. He was actually on the work site as well. He was working on the mural as well, and we happened to just stand next to one another. And we looked at each other, and we said, "What's up?" He said, "What's up?" He said, "My name is Yudi." And I said, Yudi? He was like, "Yeah, Yudi." I said, "My name is TJ." And we just started, kicking it. We just started talking about what teenagers talk about, music, hip hop. And, we really didn't get into, what was going on around us. We was just being teenagers. In the midst of the conversation, he mentioned that he was with he was with a rap group that had a minister, a rabbi, and they rapping. He's a dancer, and he's looking for another dancer. So it made sense. So I said, "All right, cool," because I wasn't doing anything particularly. As far as the summer youth employment program was about to be over with, and I needed something to do with my time, positive. So he basically connected me with Laz, who basically had a conversation with my mom, and she gave her blessing, and we started. Actually, my first audition / first appearance, you might say, with the group happened the day of the unveiling of the mural. And I was nervous, of course, and but Laz liked me, and he was like, "Okay, cool, we'll be in touch." And about 3 days after that, he spoke to my mom's, and he sent me a via fax. He sent me a itinerary of all the things that we're going to be doing. So Yudi and I, shortly after, we just, we exchanged numbers, and we just started, finding places to rehearse. And I went to his house. I met his family, his mom, his dad, his sisters, and his brother. And he came to my house and met my mom and my cousins and, you know, the people that, you know, was around my neighborhood. And we just basically built a brotherhood, you know, based off of us being, we didn't look at what was going on around us. We knew that we were sent to you know, to basically do it, not a job, but send a message. And that's what we were there for. Everything else was stages. So we basically hung out, ate pizza, you know, drank kosher soda, you know, and we just kicked it. We didn't always play basketball. We went bowling and concerts, and you know, we actually went to a St. John's basketball game together. You know what I mean? Back in the day, but I mean, you know, so that's how basically I became involved with the organization, with Project Cure, with my family. Where I lived on the borderline of Crown Heights and Flatbush, Lefferts Gardens, they will call it. And so we'll play basketball at PS 161. You know what I mean? And like Paul and Mr. Green said earlier, there wasn't really no beef back in the day. You know, I mean, we played a mixed game and stuff like that. Nobody was really asking the questions until the tragedy happened. You know, pretty much people was just getting along, you know, and just trying to coexist. But yeah, that's how
I'm sorry to interrupt you. You just mentioned also what happened with you and Yudi this past week. You know, how he, with his...
Man, that's always been good. All right, so y'all gonna have some fun. So, all right, Yudi went on, I call it a mini East Coast road trip, right? So I'm up in New Hampshire. I'm in Manchester, New Hampshire. So he shoots me a text and he's like, "Yo, bro, I'm coming up by your way. You mind if we stop by?" Of course not. So he stops. This is last Sunday. He stops by and we have a little small barbecue and everything, and I get to see my niece and my nephew, you know, and see Yudi and see his wife and, you know, spend some time. And we was just, again, we was just kicking. And as we just sitting there talking, the sky opened up. Like legit, the sky opened up, and it wasn't a cold rain. It wasn't a misty, nasty rain. It was just a nice, slow, steady, warm rain. And we was outside for a little bit, still talking and reminiscing and having a good time. Mind you, we were social distancing because my nephew, he's real sick, so we had to, you know, do the social distancing, which wasn't a problem. But you know, we had a good time. And I know why Laz wanted me to mention that is this is real. This is not just some, you know, a band that just comes together for, you know, for PR because something happened. We are actually a family, and we actually care about one another, and we check up on one another, and you know, do what, I guess, dare I say it, normal people do. You know what
TJ,
I mean?
listen, thank you for sharing all that, and just to hear about that bond and that friendship that you and Yudi have created is something that we can learn from. I think it's so special. Thank you for sharing that. So what I want to do with the little time that we still have is try to get an understanding, and these are my two questions. Question number one is, help us understand what is or what was Project Cure. What did you guys really do with the community with Project Cure? And my follow-up question to that, and you know, we can start with Laz or the Reverend or whoever is still there, Dr. Green. Besides being a grassroots effort between a bunch of teenagers, did it have, and what kind of impact did it have on the larger community in general? And in the last 20, 30 years, what kind of impact do we see from that? I know we see this amazing friendship between TJ and Yudi, but beyond that, on a wider level, did we see some of the results that you really were working for? So I don't know if Dr. Laz wants to start or Richard, but before you do that, I'm just going to share also just one picture for everyone to see. I think you'll have curiosity about this. If you look at this picture on your screen, and maybe if you want to share more about this picture, so here we have Dr. Green together with Dr. Laz, and they met an audience by the Lubavitcher Rebbe and got blessings. And I don't know the background behind this or what happened there, maybe that's something you want to share about as well. But again, we want to understand Project Cure.
Well, the Rebbe, Laz had put together, we had been wanting to meet the Rebbe, and finally Laz got the word the Rebbe would meet with us. And it was a day we were having an event at my house, but I left and come over. And it was such a beautiful meeting. What sticks out in my mind with that meeting was, as you know, the Rebbe gives you $1. And when they told the Rebbe what work we were doing, he called me back and gave me another $1. And he said, may everything you do from this day forward will prosper. And then I'm traveling to Africa not long after that, and I met one of their holy men in a group called the Bifals. These are different Muslims in Senegal and Gambia. And the holy man gave me the exact same blessing that the Rebbe had given me, almost in verbatim. Gave it to me, and it was just a corroboration that this meeting with the Rebbe was something very special. But I want to get back to the point you made earlier that was just being made about the work that we were doing and how did it manifest to now. This is almost 30 years later. Malcolm X's teacher once told him, lead the children and the adults will follow out of curiosity. And that's what happened in Crown Heights. The adults began to follow us out of curiosity. We got to get questions, and people came for answers and wanted us to do more things. So I think that's what came out of this collaboration with Laz, Project Cure, Paul, Udi, and TJ. And so with that, I ask to please humbly, my apologies. I have to take off for a minute. And I'm hoping that we'll get a chance to talk with each other again, Rabbi, as we go forward.
Well, Dr. Green, thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing with us. And God shall bless you with long life and healthy years. And keep doing amazing work for your community and for all communities and for the universal community. And I hope one day we'll be able to meet in person. Okay, so Dr. Green. So Dr. Laz, or if Reverend's still here with us, you want to give us a bit of an understanding of Project Cure and its goals and achievements? Anybody there?
Follow. And the next, we had several events that year, but later on we had our first big
Oh. Oh my gosh, what's happening here? Have I lost?
a dialogue, and people were having a dialogue with their neighbors. I had a friend that lived on President Street. I for years, but there were people that lived right next, 2 doors or so from Laz, that he didn't really know like he knows now, and they became his very good friends. Not to say he was a bad guy before, but this whole thing grew bigger. It grew bigger than the children, and we were invited to now. Oh, I have to go. I have to get my son. Laz can take it. God bless you, Rabbi. Thank you for having us. Take care.
Paul, thank you so much. God bless. Judy and TJ, you're here? Both
Yes,
you guys here, yeah?
Yeah,
All
man.
right. Okay, I'm gonna start you guys off so you all can get to know what Cure is all about. C-U-R-E. Oh, say, can you see communication
across the nation? Let's all sit down and have a conversation. You
Understand.
Judy,
I listen to you, you listen to me. We can work things out in harmony.
Respect each other.
respect it, respect who you are, respect each other's cultures, and we'll all go far. E, education.
Point of elevation. Let's keep
It keeps on growing even after graduation.
Yeah, so that's
these Zoom things, man. These
I know.
The latency is amazing, huh?
Yeah, I know, right? The latency is amazing.
A song on Zoom, but I wanted to Rabbi to go in but usually Paul is the one that kicks off that particular tune.
What's that tune?
I know
you're
it's been
back.
said about a million times before.
But change don't come easy, so you got to know the score.
You're looking
You're
for
looking
a friend.
for a friend, a
Or
lifelong brother.
You can't
You
judge
can't judge a book
by
looking at the cover.
Said you can't
Some
judge a book
by looking at the cover.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Paul, that was quick, man.
He's gone.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. He was in for his line.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that was cool. We'll get some more rap hopefully soon. Dr. Les, tell us about Project Cure.
Yeah, so I wanted to go into a little bit of that and to show you, to share with everybody some of what I felt were really like the profound changes that occurred. We started off with the dialogues, and the participants kept wanting to meet. You asked before, it was mainly the youth, I would say, older teens and in their 20s, but we opened it up to the whole community. So we often had, just people 30s, 40s, 50s showing up as well. Some people would come with their kids, but it was really all ages. And from the dialogues, I remember one of our dialogues, there were two guys there who were very quiet. And before they left, we said to them, they were participating in one of the dialogues, and we said, fella, what do y'all think of this? Is this good? And they said, yeah, we're all talking the talk, but we need to walk the walk. And we said, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, we need to play ball together. We need to do something together besides just sitting and talking. And so we played basketball together. And Montel Williams came and did a feature story on us. ESPN came and did a feature story on us. We were on the Phil Donahue show. So it started picking up like.
We never made Oprah. We never made Oprah.
Never too
No,
much.
she was self-made, TJ. She was self-made.
No, you didn't make it until you make it to Oprah. We was this close.
Everything is possible, anything is possible. So, God willing. So anyhow, then from there, we started having, if you guys remember Steve Littman, one of our early guys also with us, and he said, you guys have to break bread together. You gotta, it's sort of like if you can reach the stomach, you can reach people. And so I remember it was before Rosh Hashanah, we brought in some, some honey cake, and we shared some of that. And then we started doing all these multicultural things together, like Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas celebration that was at the Crown Heights Youth Collective. And we formed a basketball team. Like Paul said, we formed a music group. Our basketball team got the New York Knicks to dedicate one night a year to racial harmony. And we played several years in a row during this game, during halftime. So we were it was both two mixed teams of blacks and Jews together playing on the hardwood at Madison Square Garden.
And a Jewish guy slammed on the garden floor.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
TJ and Yudi were captains one year of the two teams, which was very cool.
TJ came in a suit and tie to the game, and I came in jeans and T-shirt. I felt so stupid.
TJ knows how to represent. He knows how to represent.
You're the coach, man.
And then the music group, we opened up for Gospel Night in Brooklyn a year after the riots. Actually, a little even sooner. It was about 10 months after the riots. We opened up for Al Green at Gospel Night. We played for U.S. Congress. We played in those days. We played for the Democratic Convention in New York City. So things just started taking off. But
we started speaking in lots of different colleges and having conversation. Basically, the idea of all these things Laz is talking about really is not just what we've done, but the ability to start conversations and to be able to get people to start asking questions. Because without questions, you can't have conversation. Without listening, there's nothing going on.
Then Yudi, something very significant started happening, Rabbi, in Crown Heights. And that was, people would see Yudi and TJ walking down the street together, going into the pizza shop together, like TJ was saying before. And people who knew each other from now these discussions, the ball plan, the culture started to change, where people would give each other high fives, give each other hugs on the street, you know,
Okay.
going to each other's simchas, you know, to their you know, family events. And so
Yeah.
it started to change the vibe on the street. And I think that that was really important, you know, that we,
I
people
mean,
yeah, go ahead, T.
I'm sorry. We understand. Since I've been up in New England for about 13 years, and there are people, I walk in the jewelry stores, and there are people that own the jewelry stores that say, I remember your concert in '94, the big concert we had over at Megalis College.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I had a rabbi stop me over there at Fenwick Park and ask me to speak to some of his kids because he remembers us when we did a show at I think it was one of the senior homes. You know what I mean? Like legit. So, and we haven't at that time we wasn't really doing anything. We just planted a seed, and that seed just grew. You know, and it's like, yeah, I remember you from Crown Heights. You know what I mean? When you have people appreciate the work that you do, because you have to understand, you even I was 16 years old. We get up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because somebody had this issue. It wasn't calling Mr. Green. It wasn't calling Paul. It wasn't calling us. They were calling us. You know what I mean? Because the issues wasn't with the adults. The issues were with the young people, at least on our side. The issues were with the young people. So we had.
All right, TJ, that's an interesting point. I mean, you're coming across a little unclear. I'm not sure for everybody else as well, but that's an interesting point that the issues were with the young, the teenagers, and that's the people you were tapping in. So let me just now fast forward to 2020. Okay. So I lived in Crown Heights 10, 15, 20 years after these riots. My observation is that Crown Heights was a very different place than it was 20 years earlier. I'm not saying it's the perfect place, but people live very peacefully among each other, and I think I see a lot of interaction. And I would like to say credit to you guys and credit to many other efforts that were going on, and that it's a much more peaceful, cohesive community now than it was. I'd like maybe have some comments about that. But the question is, what about the, sorry, where's the rest of the country holding? Have we as a nation made progress in the last 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years? I hope we have. I think we have. And yet we saw now 2020, what's going on now in the past month. What do you have any reflections of why and what can I do? What can you do? What can we do as a community here in South Florida?
So I'd like to answer this, if you don't mind.
You want to start it?
Yeah, I'd like to start this.
Okay, I'll jump in after you.
So first, the first thing I'd like to say is that according to Judaism, the world was created with speech, according to 3 major religions. Speech, by default, needs somebody to listen for speech to be effective. When somebody's speaking, if nobody hears it, is anybody speaking? And so the bottom line is, conversation. Rambam says when you have the opportunity to greet somebody, you should be the first one to greet them. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, it's a long story, but the summary of the story basically is the Rebbe said, say hello to your neighbor. That is a solution to dealing with the problem. So it seems like a very simple thing. Just say hello to people. How are you? But what happens is when you say hello to people, you start if you see them regularly, you start a conversation. It's ongoing. It's not just hello. You don't look like you're feeling so good today. It's all of a sudden you start caring for the person. You start noticing things about a person once you start communicating with them. It starts changing the space and how you perceive things around you. Not just that. There are many stories you can find online of somebody was on their way to commit suicide and somebody said something or did something nice to them and it changed their whole life. They didn't do it all of a sudden. The ability to make a change just with words is super impactful. More than we can even imagine. In Chabad Chassidus, it talks about how the 3 garments of the soul, thought, speech, and action. Speech itself has the ability to make a massive change. It is sometimes considered action as well. We say by prayer that speech is action. That's why we have to say it with our lips moving, etc. It makes a significant difference by talking to somebody, and not just talking, listening, hearing the person. The reason I'm a musician is because the job of a musician is to listen. 80% of music is the notes you don't play, even if you're a busy musician, because by default, you have to leave space for somebody else to speak. And so you have to give space for somebody else. And it makes a massive difference when communicating and listening. And that's a simple answer, and it's a simple solution, and it's very impactful. And there's many other things that we can go into as well. But I would say a takeaway, I call a doctor's office, doctor, I'm like, hi, how are you? And I pause. I wait for an answer. I get into an Uber, I put my phone away. Ask the driver, how are you doing today? I listen. Who's a wise man? He who learns from everybody. I've learned more from the people I disagree with than those I agree with. Because those I agree with, they're already saying what I know. Those I disagree with are going to teach me something that I don't know. And I'm going to become a better person for listening to people, having patience for them. I wish I had patience. That's my biggest prayer, is I have patience. Listening, hearing with your whole being makes a massive difference. It changes the playing field. I recently worked up till COVID. I was furloughed. I was working in B&H, and and I used to work. I worked in pro audio department, and the when the big scary black guys would come in, I'd be the one to go over and to say hello to them and to talk to them. Specifically, walk over. And there are a lot of my colleagues are big, tall black guys. They're guys that if I didn't know them and I was walking in an alley, I'd probably be a little scared, just because they're so big and so overbearing. But when you know these guys they're teddy bears, and I go over to these guys that look like they're from Nation of Islam and other things and start talking to them. And I'd start with, how are you? And they say, oh, first I say, hi, how are you? And they say, I need this and that. I say, and I wouldn't move. I'd say, how are you today? How are you doing? And I'd start a conversation. I'd force them to have a conversation, because I would not budge until they responded to me. They wanted something from me, so I want them to be a human being. I want them to realize that there's a human being interaction here before anything else. Once there's a human being interaction, now we have what to start working with in common. Adam means man. In Hebrew, there are pretenses, and Adam means man in singular and plural, masculine, feminine, past tense, and future tense. The smallest molecule the average human being talks about, when I'm talking about scientists, is an atom. And I know it's spelled one with a T, one with a D, but in Hebrew it's the way it sounds, not the way it's written. And so we ourselves in a bigger body, and we need each other. Nobody's better than anybody else. Everybody's a part of each other. And when we realize that that person across the table arguing with us is us, we're sitting there in internal conflict. We have to start realizing that it's us that's fighting with ourselves. And all these agendas are just there so we cannot unite as a single entity, because if we were united, I can only imagine the greatness that would come out of that. Think about a human body when it's healthy, what it can accomplish. It can accomplish more than we can ever imagine. And right now, where we're standing, we are a sick body subdivided into many parts. I know in Eastern medicines, the getting the meridians to all work together, it heals the body. When the energy flows together, it works. It accomplishes amazing things. I mean, I've been blessed to be able to meet amazing individuals in my life, and people with very powerful cheese, able to move bells the size of Liberty Bell without touching it, but by using their chi. That's focused energy on a healthy body. We can move things, we can accomplish things beyond our wildest dreams. And we're not going to go into all the biblical concepts of such things as well, of a unified mankind with the creator and all that. I mean, that's unimaginable. And I can't understand such concepts. Please, by all means.
Yeah, let me jump in. And I just wanted to mention something what Yudi was talking about, and how some of the lessons that we learned, that we struggled with when we first started, these very diverse ethnic communities. with a lot of hostility, and some of the things and how we were able to overcome those obstacles. And I think one of the key components was when we all first met with, this was Richard, Paul, and myself, we decided we were going to have two basic rules. And one was, it's okay, we agree to disagree, which leads to conversation, which leads to growth, like Yudi had pointed out. And the second thing was, when somebody is speaking, then just listen to them. In other words, give the person their chance to say what's on their mind. So, and I think what that leads to, like now we see on social media where, you know, everyone is waving their own flags. Everyone's in this camp and in that camp. And, you know, it's very divisive, and the environment is very divisive. But sometimes these sparks of listening to another person and bringing them into a dialogue has made a powerful impact. And I'll just give you a couple examples. One was there was some people from Black Lives Matter who went to a Trump rally. And I give this guy so much credit. The guy on the stage, he said, you know what, we're gonna do something different. Instead of just shouting him down, I'm gonna invite the leader of BLM, this particular, you know, this geographic group in this town. I'm gonna invite him up here. I'm giving 2 minutes to say what his beliefs are, what his platform is. And he says to the crowd, we're gonna try something different. I know you people are not used to this, but so I give him a lot of credit. This guy gets up there, he talks to them for 2 minutes. When it was over, it wasn't even so much, you know, what he said, but the fact that he was given that platform, it changed the vibe. And people took pictures with him. There were these guys who you would think would be like, you know, big Southern rednecks. They're taking pictures with this guy, the director of the BLM, and he's holding their, you know, their kids and everything. And what was the trick? What, not even a trick. What was the beauty of it was that this guy said, I'm going to validate you, but even though I might disagree with you, but I'm going to give you a platform to say what you got to say. And I've experienced that personally many times. I'll just share this one thing that happened in Crown Heights, where we had a meeting. It was a meeting with the community, and it was so hot and intense, maybe 4 months after the riots, that the police had to come in and tell everybody to leave. They thought there were going to be, you know, violence. We were on the sidewalk, and this guy from the Nation of Islam comes up to me, and he identifies himself as coming from Nation of Islam, and he says, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. Thank the good Lord we had made those two rules, especially the second one. So he said, okay. I said, okay, what's up? So he went on for somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes straight on the street corner on Empire Boulevard in Crown Heights. When he finished, I said to him, are you done? Because I want to respond to some of the points you made. You know, now we can have a conversation. I heard what you had to say. So he then said to me, before you respond, I want to give you a hug. And he gives me a hug. This is a guy from one of Farrakhan's people, who you would think, if anybody is on opposite sides, it's a chassid from Crown Heights, a Chabadnik from Crown Heights, and somebody from the Nation of Islam. He gives me a hug on Empire Boulevard. It's maybe 11 o'clock at night. And I was flabbergasted. I was like, you know, I was, what? And he said to me, you are the first white person that ever listened to me. Even though I disagree with 90% of what he had to say, but I listened to him. So I think we need to do a lot more of that. And that's really what you're doing tonight. You are fostering this dialogue. And it has a lot of power to it, because people will go home. Yudi mentioned the thing that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said to this individual. He told him, say hello to your neighbors. That was a way to make the community better. And so the Rebbe always thought globally, thought universally, but always acted locally. And so that was a lot of power, this notion of say hello to your neighbors. And I saw that work out in our own lives and on our block in Crown Heights. But I'm gonna save that. TJ, do we have anything you want to add to?
I just wanted to jump in for a second. I wanted to say that, you know, when the Rebbe said something, it's not that the Rebbe meant something else. The Rebbe was an engineer. He was very practical and technical on ways that we don't understand. Engineers are problem solvers, and when he gives a simple answer like that, it is so much larger than we can imagine. It is so much bigger, and a lot of people that study his works are looking for deeper meanings and stuff. And he broke things down very simply. If you just look at it at face value and nothing more, you walk away with a treasure trove of information. And if you try to dig deeper, you end up in another plane of existence, which we're not even going to go into. But his solutions are very practical, very tangible, and it's easy to forget that. And I'm sorry, T, now you wanted to jump in and say something?
So, Yuri, thank you, and Dr. Les, thank you. And I think we'll have some time for just a little bit of time if some questions on the chat if someone wants to ask. But I want to make just one reflection, and really, you just brought it up, and I was thinking about this the whole time. And you know, since the George Floyd story, we've been talking a lot about it in our community, and I personally and others have made an extra conscientious effort to, whether it's someone on the street or it's a lady in the park or it's a neighbor, greet them, hello, how are you, stop and talk, try to empathize and share something in common. But then there's always something that runs through your mind and that says, big deal. So it's one person I'm touching or two people that I'm touching, but I'm not changing the country, I'm not changing the world. What value does my good little deed have? Now, of course, it's a good deed, but when you want to be impactful. But I look at Project Cure, I look at your guys here tonight, and I'm learning what, you know, a grassroots effort, as you said, can have such an impact, and the amount of people that were touched by you in the stories you're sharing. So I don't think we can ever know the true impact of a one hello to your neighbor and a one hello to the person who's serving you in the store or helping you in the store or the mailman or whoever it is. And especially if it's a black person or someone from a different color, different race, different community, how powerful that can be. So that's a takeaway that I have, and I think everyone should have from that. And I know Sabrina mentioned the question here. What are your thoughts when NFL and major athletes who kids look up to are saying anti-Semitic comments? So Dr. Laz, you right away responded, we got to call out racism and anti-Semitism wherever it occurs. So I thank you for sharing that. That's very important to speak up like that. And we are seeing nowadays this anti-racism, but this anti-Semitism, we're seeing, unfortunately, one not playing out like the other. And there should be no tolerance, of course, for either. So thank you for sharing that. And maybe if anyone wants to ask a couple more questions, we'll have time for that, or some closing remarks from Dr. Laz, from Yudi, and from TJ.
And Reverend Chandler is back, by the way.
Oh, great.
We knew you couldn't keep away, Brother Paul.
Yeah, or maybe another little rap for us.
Yeah, you know, I just wanted to mention that unlike Nancy Pelosi, who put it on for one little 5-minute thing, you know, at the White House, but this was made for me by Paul's mother years ago, and we use this at our concerts, and so it's very meaningful for me. She made one for Paul also because she didn't want Paul to be jealous, you know, and so yeah, it's very special, and I usually try to wear it to our Cure, you know, Zoom events here. Paul, would you, you know, we missed you for the last little bit. So the rabbi was just asking about, like, you know, what are some of the things we could, you know, some lessons that we've learned and that what we could share with the current situation today. How you see some of that playing out? You might be muted.
The longest I've ever heard Paul not answer a question. Baptist minister, you know?
Hello.
Hey, welcome back to the party.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Paul, I'm glad you're back. Some closing remarks, especially in light of today, 2020, state of the world.
Wow. Well, first, we thank you for hosting this. And I think that as we started the year and our communication, we started talking about this whole question of the era that we're in. And the year is 2020. 2020, as we all know, it's like perfect vision. No one knew that that perfect vision would help us to see things that many of us couldn't see for years. And a good example is it's a new conversation that has come up, or that's part of the unveiling of some stuff that has been hidden for years and people didn't want to talk about it. And now it's at the point that it's beyond talking, but take, for instance, the whole question of the Confederate flag, the generals, etc. Well, I was invited as part of a youth festival to Poland some years ago. And I was able to go to Germany, Poland, and back then it was the Soviet Union, but I was able to go into the concentration camps. And what I saw, it was almost like I could relive it. And it made you cry when you saw the walls, and you saw the remnants of what the people went through and how they were tortured. But just being there, it stuff that I learned, in school, but as a teacher, because for years I taught at Brooklyn College, College of New Rochelle, Medgar Evers College, and UMass. But that experience, I couldn't imagine having a statue of Hitler's generals on Eastern Parkway. And I'm only using that as a comparison. Now, people are upset the fact that Black people are saying, let's tear them down. But other people are saying, it's not just Black people, but people are coming to their, becoming conscious enough to say, we've been having this shadow over us. It's time to get rid of it. Now, whether we agree with it or not, but I always say this here. There was a saying, anyway, I'm rushing this because I want to get, the Jewish community has been so close to us. We didn't turn our back, and they haven't turned their back on us. Martin Luther King had a great relationship with the Jewish community. But then there are people that try to divide us. Now, imagine if someone wanted to put one of those statues on Kingston Avenue, I would be one of the people that would want to tear that statue down. And I'm saying a lot of people don't understand what our forefathers went through. My great grandfather was a slave here in this country. Do you understand? He was a slave. My great grandmother was a slave. I don't want to live under that, And so the movements that I see, for some reason I've been in, it's been those movements. Even I'm part of this group that we've taken children to Israel. Even we took a group of children that we flew on with the original pilots for the Falashas. You remember that, Laz?
Yeah, it was Operation Moses.
You talked about it? Did you speak about it?
No, I didn't. I didn't mention it.
So I'm just running it real fast. But the students who went on those trips and saw that experience and they learned about that history, it really inspired them to do more things in our community together with their Jewish neighbors. Those are the kinds of things that we try to incorporate in our program, and it was great.
I wanted to say, Paul, never in history has the loser told their story. It's always the winner of history that tells their story.
I'm well aware of that.
Yeah, so that to me, that the fact that these statues are up, to me, is the most backwards thing, because it's not the winners that are standing there with the statues, it's the losers. And to me, that makes no sense. And from even without what you're saying, just from a historical perspective, it makes no sense. And what you're saying is 100% valid.
The fact, Yudi, it does make sense. See, the people that buy into it, it makes sense to them because it gives them a feeling of, what do you think it gives? What kind of feeling? Why are they fighting to maintain them?
Oh, of course, because they feel that they were wrongfully, it wasn't done right. Things weren't as it should be. It should really be the way that these people with of the statues should be the way that's right. That's why they feel that. They feel that these people that the statues stand for is the correct way, and it's just backwards otherwise. 100%. But that's the loser saying that, being a sore loser saying that I lost, and I really should have won, and I'm going to fight to be a winner. But the story of history is, in history, is the winner tells the story, not the loser.
Right, but
Well,
let me jump in here too, guys. I
go
mean,
ahead.
I think what Paul is saying is that it's a not so subtle form of racism.
100%, I agree. I agree.
It's not subtle, and Paul and I have discussed this quite a bit, and I'm with you all the way on this, my brother. There's no.
I never thought you were. We never. You were never.
I'm not against it. I was just adding an addition to what you were saying.
No, it's great, Yudi.
Yeah, not to anything to belittle what you're saying. On the contrary,
No, I didn't think you were doing that, Yudi. Yeah. Honestly.
No problem.
You have gray hair now, Yudi. I know.
I didn't notice. Thanks for pointing that out. When did that happen?
All right, guys. So yeah, you brought up the whole statue issue, and a lot of
Rabbi. You see, we still have dialogue, right?
No, I'm loving the dialogue here. I could listen,
and I could listen a lot.
I could truly listen a whole night, and I would love to have this conversation.
And you don't have Yudi's father here.
Oh. But the hour's getting late. Maybe we need to do another session together because I've really enjoyed this, and I'm sure everybody has. I think there's a request for another little bit of hip hop or something, or some kind of rap, and then maybe Dr. Laz has a final remark to make before we close for the evening.
23rd song.
Yeah, Laz. No, hold on. That's Laz.
About, I know it's been said. Did we sing that yet?
We already, but we didn't get into. No, we already did that one, but we didn't do some. Yeah.
Well, why don't we sing?
Some politicians' fingers are itching. They keep on wishing that our brains went fishing. That fuel to the fire, increase the rage. They only want the pictures on the front page. Come on, Laz.
Every
issue is a color of our tissue.
It's outright crazy.
They're outright crazy.
No.
They got to know it takes a whole spectrum to make a rainbow.
Stereotype.
Smacks on
a label and put you on the box. Says you're not able, then it closes the lock. Don't matter if you're black, white, yellow, red, or purple. Everyone
you meet as an
individual.
Everyone you meet
as an individual.
All right, brother T.
What'd you say, Ripple? You still drinking
individual Ripple?
Everyone you meet, let's go and share some Ripple.
Oh, say, can
we did that. We started that one.
You did?
Yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
I told you how old I was. Come on.
Okay, so let's do, Paul, do PEACE.
What is that? What is that? Backward now. Increase the peace.
You ready? But you got to unmute everybody. And when you hear us say PEACE, just everybody say increase
the peace.
Okay,
go.
So everybody unmute everybody.
All right, we'll do that.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, do the
and feel free to join in, please. We can't do it without you.
Right on. Paul, you do the PEACE, and I'll do it after they come in and say increase the peace.
Okay? You and I just keep the increase the peace.
Okay. Paul, you start it. PEACE.
PEACE.
Increase the peace.
Locally.
PEACE.
Increase the peace.
Most hilarious thing ever.
Nationally.
Wait a minute. Someone's asking a question.
What
happened?
Somebody's mics unmuted and they're talking. Continue, Paul.
Yeah, go for it, my brother.
PEACE.
Increase the peace.
Globally.
P-E-A-C-E.
Increase the peace.
Increase the peace.
Eternally.
It sounds better when we have the music. So if we're going to groove, we got to get juicy. Let's go now. Let's do it right. If we want to end this thing tonight, so let's come on, brothers. Let's come together. Come together.
Right
Increase the peace.
now.
over me.
With everybody.
Bless you all. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you,
Why
Miami.
don't we do 23rd Psalm?
Oh, good idea.
I'd like to end on that.
All right,
Come on,
last
you
one,
started.
my friends. Last one for tonight. We're going to wrap it up with Psalm 23, a beautiful chapter. Take it away, Psalm 23.
Okay, Paul, you ready? Zip man, you ready?
Go ahead. Go, Laz. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Mizmor. Right, you got to say it in English, Paul. Okay, Mizmor.
Oh.
Yeah. Unless you want to do it in
The
Hebrew.
Lord is my shepherd.
Are you ready, my brother?
Hello. Hello.
Somebody's got music playing in the background.
That's all right.
Hello.
All right, Paul, let's go. 23rd Psalm.
Yo, I'm having a little problem here. Hold on.
Uh-huh.
Go
Okay.
ahead, Laz. You do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I'm going to wait for you till you're ready. Come on, this is the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Even I know this.
Oh, I know it. What are you saying? I'm trying to get me.
If-
The Lord is my shepherd. I
Mizmor-
shall not want. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, do I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Baruch Hashem.
Rabbi, thank you so much
Amen.
for having us.
Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everybody. Thank
Rabbi,
you for coming out.
Rabbi, you asked for closing remarks. I just want to say that when the mayor met with
Hello?
3 or 4 after the riot started, the Rebbe said to the mayor, well, first let me say, the mayor said, you're the leader of your community, I'm the leader of my community. Let's work together to bring peace to both communities. So I'll end with this. And the Rebbe told the mayor, he said, Mr. Mayor, we're not 2 communities. We're 1 community under 1 administration, we're 1 God.
And 1 God.
Amen. Dr. Ladd, so thank you so much. Listen, everybody.
Thank you again, Rabbi.
Thank you for
Let me
having
just
us,
say
Rabbi.
a big thank you to Dr. Laz, to Reverend Paul, and to Dr. Gord, Dr. Green, and TJ, and Yuri for joining us. We learned a lot. You shared a lot, and we appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. And as you're winding up this program or closing off, we're going to do the peace prayer together. We're all going to sing. Ohose Shalom Bimromav. Uyase Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Ve'imru. Ve'imru.
I got a better one.
Shalom.
Yaseh shalom.
Shalom Aleinu.
Israel.
Yaseh Shalom.
Sing it, Paul.
Yaseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu. Yah Israel.
Wow, gorgeous. May there be peace in America. May there be peace in Israel. May there be peace all around the world. May there be health all around the world. All those who need a speedy refuah shlema should have that. We should be able to come together truly in person without masks or distancing as one community. Greet each other, hug each other, dance with each other, recognize true peace in our souls, in our lives, and in our homes and communities. And we should merit the ultimate world of peace with the coming of Mashiach. B'mheira v'yameinu. Amen.
Revelation.
Amen.
Yeah, but you mean the revelation of Mashiach. The Rebbe said you have to open your eyes.
Hey,
Amen.
Rabbi,
Correct.
the next time
Yes,
next time I come to Miami, I must come there.
You come. We gotta sit.
And
We gotta
come have
talk. We gotta
Shabbos
talk
with
with each other. You
I-
come for
I'm
Shabbos and for
saying it.
Kiddush and for Cholent.
That's right. Okay. Goodbye. Good night, everyone. Peace.
All right, good
Shalom.
night. Thank you,
Hello.
everybody.
I want to
night,
say to everybody
Miriam.
before we walk away,
Everybody, God bless.
I want to say before everybody gets off over here, whoever's here still,
I gotta bring it over to you.
I want to say to you all, listen, we empower you guys to make a change in your world. Each of us are responsible for our own physical space in the world around us. Make it a better world that you live in. Be the change you want to see. Make that world that you see the place that you create. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Yuri, thank you. Miriam,
Thank
good
you,
night.
Yudi.
So much.
Mr. Ben Amur,
Good
good
night,
night.
everybody.
Good
Now
night, Roz. Good
that's
night,
a
Amy.
really
Good
mature
night,
young man.
Aaron, Lainey, Sabrina, Clayton. Good night, everybody. And
Night.
God bless you.
By the way, that is
And,
the shortest sentence I've ever heard from Yudi. That was the most powerful, Yudi Bud.
good night,
You
everyone.
want? I hung out with a
Be
minister and a
safe.
rabbi growing up.
I don't. I'm sorry, Yudi. You got like sandwiched in for that. Oh, baby. What's
Oh, yeah.
up?
Very good.
Bud?